What is up, everybody? This is Matt Ferrara. I am one half of the Ice the Kicker podcast brought to you by Caps on Sports, and this is the third edition of Matt's Mock. So, here, after not too much news, but I think the biggest news that came out recently is that the Miami Dolphins are actually back on the trading block with that sixth overall pick. So, kind of gets me pretty excited as a Dolphin fan myself to think about, hey, maybe they can even accumulate more draft picks that they got from that Laramie Tunsil trade a couple years ago. But without further ado, let's get right into it. So obviously, again, like I keep saying, episode after episode of Matt's Mocks here, Trevor Lawrence is the number one overall pick. However, if you listen to our Ice the Kicker podcast, Glenn and I talked about how he had some concerning quotes, I guess you could say, where kind of made you question the caliber of not athlete or even person, but just how invested he is in football and in giving his all to the team. So kind of alarming there, but I still think that Trevor Lawrence is the bona fide number one overall pick and best quarterback in this draft. Next, we got the Jets. Again, everything leads to them getting Zach Wilson, even though personally, if I was the Jets, I think I'd go Fields, but we'll send Wilson out of BYU over to the Jets. Now, a couple weeks ago, it was Mac Jones to the Niners. It was maybe even Trey Lance, but I saw that picture of Kyle Shanahan talking to the head coach of Ohio State, Coach Day, and he's locked in on Justin Fields right now. And I know he was at and a bunch of other teams were at Trey Lance's pro day as well, but Justin Fields again, I think has gotten more heat for just him as a player, his stats, that he's from Ohio State, that is completely unfair. And I think Justin Fields is absolutely going to light it up in that Kyle Shanahan offense with the 49ers. So we'll send Justin Fields over there to the Bay Area. Now, this is the big one here. Again, I know the Falcons flirted with possibly trading back to a QB needy team, even though I think they could potentially be a QB needy team themselves in a year or two. And I think this is a perfect situation for them to go one of two ways. And I think both avenues are awesome for them to go down. And that's one, getting Kyle Pitts, the number one overall pass catcher, or going and getting a guy like Trey Lance, who is a more, I guess, more of a workshop quarterback. Not to say that he's not good or anything, but he's more of a mobile kind of run first quarterback. And obviously, he hasn't really faced the best of competition because he was playing out in North Dakota State, which is Division II or Division I AA. I forgot exactly what it is, but it's not to say that he's not a great player. But I think with their situation with the Falcons, with still having Matt Ryan for at least 2 more years, I think they're going to go with the best player, that's best non-quarterback, I guess you could say, in Kyle Pitts here. So now again, another interesting one. Do you go Jamar Chase or do you go Penei Sewell? And honestly, it's kind of a 50-50 toss-up here to what I think they're going to end up doing. What would I do? I think you got to get your QB, your franchise QB, some help on that offensive line to try to repair or keep that surgically repaired knee fully intact and hopefully not hurt the other one or any other kind of part of Joe Burrow's body. I still think that they might flirt with Jamar Chase a little bit and just kind of hope to reignite that reunion that they had and just reignite that electricity that they had down in Baton Rouge for that 2019 championship run. So let's say they go down that route. Let's go with Jamar Chase right now to Cincinnati. Now, like I prefaced earlier, the Dolphins are taking some calls, and apparently, according to Ian Rappaport and a lot of other NFL insiders, that they don't want to jump back too far. And I know you look at other kind of QB needy teams, and you look at, let's try to scroll here. So you got so you have potentially Washington later, you have potentially Chicago later, both in the 20s there. Now, I don't really think that makes the most sense for Miami because I still think they need an elite player in this draft, and because you can keep trading back and accumulating draft picks, but at some point you have to pick great players. So I think this 9 spot right here is a chance for the Broncos to get their quarterback of the future, because I don't think Drew Lock is the answer there. And it's a chance for Miami to also get a elite player in this draft, specifically at the pass catcher position. So let's try to make a trade right here. So we got the Dolphins trading with the Broncos. And this is where it gets kind of pretty interesting. Obviously, it's going to be a 6 and a 9 flip. Now it's about what is the rest of the compensation. I do the Broncos give up a 2022 first? Maybe. Again, I might just keep it at this just to keep it simple. You just say, hey, we're going to give you it. Just jumping up 3 spots, although very important when you look at the kind of draft pick evaluation, like PowerPoints chart that a lot of other teams and people and GMs use and stuff like that. And again, obviously, I'm sure I can get greedy and throw in a 3 or a third and a fourth and whatever. But I think that this is a fair deal. You just got a nice pick swap here, and then you get Denver's 1 next year for them to potentially get that higher price for a quarterback and get their QB of the future. So let's send this over and see if they accept it. Boom. So right there. So they accepted that, even though I think Miami might be able to sneak out a little bit more. But for right now, we'll keep this here. So obviously, you have Trey Lance here and you have Mac Jones here as well. I still think, again, Mac Jones, I think he's a very good player, but I think Trey Lance just gets you a little bit more excited as far as what he can do on the football field athletically. And I think that's something that Denver's quarterbacks have lacked. They've had Paxton Lynch, Brock Osweiler, Drew Lock, all guys who kind of look the part. They're taller, they're bigger bodies, they got great arms, but not really guys like Trey Lance who can really kind of change the game with not just his arm, but his legs as well. So I think we're going to go with Trey Lance here. Now, I think right here, it makes the most sense for Denver. Again, you could go Sewell and get one of the best linemen in the draft, or I think the best lineman in the draft. But I still think with losing Kenny Golladay and losing Marvin Jones Jr., I think you got to go with the best pass catcher available here. And you have kind of your pick between Jaylen Waddle or Devontae Smith. Let's say they go with more of that wide receiver 1 kind of outside guy in Devontae Smith here. Then at pick 8, again, right here, it says biggest team need, offensive tackle to try to protect Sam Darnold and hopefully make him their QB of the future. I think this is a perfect fit for Sewell and for the Panthers as well. Now, again, Miami has an opportunity to get a guy that they could have picked at 3, a guy they could have picked at 6, but now they get the same guy they probably still want, a guy like Waddle, but at 9. And they also accumulated a 2022 first rounder from the Niners and a 2023 first rounder from the Niners, and now also a 2022 first rounder from Denver as well, all to get probably the same player, but ideally the same position. So we'll go with Jaylen Waddle here at 9 for the Miami Dolphins, pairing him and reuniting him with Tua. Here again, you're going cornerback. I know Jerry Jones loves his offense, but at some point you have to invest in that defense. You absolutely have to. And I think perfect pick here would be Patrick Surtain. I think he's an absolute stud. Probably will be just like his Hall of Fame dad, who had a great career down in Miami for many years. And so I go with Patrick Surtain here for the Cowboys. Now this is maybe Giants fans, do I say worst nightmare? I don't know if I would go that far, but they don't get that elite pass catcher that they may have wanted. Granted, though, you already spent $18 million a year on Kenny Golladay. So I guess you could say, how much more do you necessarily need in one offseason? Great, you can go get one next offseason in free agency or in the draft. I still think there's some guys out there in free agency, or for them, even in the second, third rounds, a lot of high value kind of guys like maybe Kadarius Toney, Terrace Marshall Jr., Dwayne Eskridge, guys like that they can get in the second round that could maybe do what some of these first round kind of top 10 pick wide receivers can do, just maybe not as good, maybe not an elite level, but maybe they can get there one day. So it says their biggest need is edge rusher, but I don't see any of value here. Like none of these edge rushers here really kind of scream, all right, he's a top 11 talent in this draft. I think shoring up that offensive line would help a little bit, but you have Solder coming back. You still have Andrew Thomas there. I know you can kick one of them into guard, but I think if you see a guy like Micah Parsons here to pair alongside Blake Martinez, those are two absolute phenoms when it comes to getting after either the quarterback or whatever is handling the football on that very play. So I think this would be a great pick that many Giants fans would love to have with Micah Parsons here at 11. Now going over to Philly, staying in the NFC East here. His biggest need, same thing, wide receiver, tight end. I just don't see many. Again, originally, if the Philly was stayed at 6, I had them locked in for Kyle Pitts for a while. But now I think you have to go with a position that is going to not only help the quarterback and protect him, but also the running game as well. And that's something that just is only going to help Philly's offense. I think you go Rashawn Slater, offensive tackle 2 in this draft here. And I think that is really going to sting when it comes to the Chargers. And I know there were some rumors about how they potentially wanted to trade up for Penei Sewell. I don't know if the Chargers are going to be willing to pay that price to kind of creep into that top 10 there from 13. And I don't think any teams in that top 10 want to give up that pick to get one of those kind of elite players, because after you kind of see it after that Slater pick, you look at the guys kind of left. And yes, there are a lot of great talents out there. And obviously, many of them are going to pan out. Some of them in these top 10 here probably won't. But just basing off of the hype that they're currently getting and just what a lot of the other NFL insiders are saying and stuff like that, it seems like these are the elite kind of 12 players here. Maybe Slater's not in that same category, but even from 11 down here, all those guys are, for the most part, elite level talents in this draft class. And that's not to say that these guys aren't going to have as great as careers or whatnot, but off a name basis and off a hype basis, there seems to be a little drop off here. But let's give them the next best offensive tackle available, and we'll go with Christian Darrisaw out of Virginia Tech. Now, here's an interesting one because they lost Anthony Harris in free agency, and I think the safety Trayvon Moehrig is a great addition to that defense, but I just think that shoring up that offensive line a little bit and making Kirk Cousins' life a little bit easier, and then expanding some holes for Dalvin Cook, who's getting 14 million, and you got Kirk Cousins getting 30 plus million. You want to make sure those guys are protected and have some holes to run through. So we'll go with one of the best interior offensive linemen in Elijah Vera Tucker out of USC. And now, honestly, perfect storm for the Patriots. I think you're going to send in the Mac Jones pick faster than any pick that, besides maybe Jacksonville getting Trevor Lawrence here. I know Owusu Cormo, a linebacker out of Notre Dame, could make some sense. I know they're still kind of intrigued in some wide receivers, even though they still have N'Keal Harry. Cornerback as well, maybe. I know for some reason they've been shopping Stephon Gilmore, who's one of the best cornerbacks in the game. I don't really understand that part. I guess it depends if they can get a good enough deal, but I think right here makes the most sense to get Mac Jones here at pick 15 for New England. And then that would make Arizona's life a lot easier because you can get cornerback 2 in the draft, J.C. Horn out of South Carolina. Now, rounding back out to the Las Vegas Raiders, who had a weird offseason. They got Yannick Ngakoue. They they got Yannick Ngakoue. They got Kenyon Drake, which is kind of weird because they're paying him $7 million to basically be an occasional pass catching back whenever Josh Jacobs isn't in the lineup, but he's more of a 3-down back anyway. So I don't know how much we'll see of Kenyon Drake out there, but hey, getting $7 million to kind of be a backup, that ain't the worst thing in the world. But their offensive line really took a hit, but then they got some guys back. They kind of just shuffled around a bunch. They traded Rodney Hudson, their center, to Arizona. And I still think there's a clear need for another offensive lineman to help out Derek Carr in that offense. I think going Tevin Jenkins here would make perfect sense for both parties here. And this, obviously, as a Miami Dolphins fan, is a very interesting kind of scenario that you have left. Now, they definitely need edge, as clearly the Draft Network's kind of team needs points out here. But I still don't love any of these picks. Just not necessarily 18. I think those are more kind of second round talents, maybe end of first round. And it may be hypocritical to say or to pick who I'm about to pick here, but again, Miami and that RPO offense needs a run game. They need a premier running back. And I think getting Najee Harris here at 18 makes perfect sense. I know it may be a little bit of a reach to some people, but they need a running back. They need someone who's going to do it all. He can run with power. He can run with speed. I know he gets knocked for his speed for whatever. He can jump over someone. He can plow through you. He could shift to the left, juke to the left, juke to the right, do whatever he needs to do. And he catches passes. And on top of that, he's a phenomenal pass blocker as well. Something that every running back needs to have to be an elite one. And I think you have a do-it-all kind of guy here, Najee Harris. What does it matter if you pick him here at 18 or not? So I think this is a perfect pick for them. And also factor in that if they pass up on him there, they don't pick again until 36. Maybe all three of the top three, then you make the same mistake you made last year, which they absolutely cannot do. So then now going over to Washington, I think this is a scenario where the rich get richer in the sense that already very good borderline elite defense. I would even say it's one of the probably top 5 in the NFL. You give them a versatile piece in Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. I think that's just going to make him an absolute terror for the other teams in the NFC East. Then here we got Chicago again. QB needy team. Andy Dalton isn't the answer. Mitch Trubisky definitely was not the answer. But there's really no quarterbacks left that make the most sense at this very pick here. So you're not going to reach for one now. I think this is a scenario where you're going to have to go best player available. And I know that edge is kind of deep down there, but you got to figure Khalil Mack is not going to be on this team for that much longer. So I think they kind of need that piece that is going to essentially be his Robin to Khalil Mack's Batman for the time being, and eventually take over as the Batman role and be the premier pass rusher in this defense. And I think this is where you're going to go with Kwity Paye here out of Michigan. Just an absolute monster. I mean, we got 6'4", 277 pounds. Imagine 277 pounds on one side. You got Khalil Mack, who is an easy 250 on the other side. That is a scary, scary thing to look at. And then plus you got Roquan Smith right down the middle. Those are potentially 3 elite players all hoarding around the offensive line there for Chicago's defense. Now here it says that the Colts need an offensive tackle. I know the Colts obviously picked up Carson Wentz. They also picked up or re-signed T.Y. Hilton to a 1-year deal. And I think this is a perfect spot for them to kind of find T.Y. Hilton's future replacement, and getting a guy like Rashad Bateman. Pretty sure he had like a 4.4 40. I mean, 6'1", 190. So he's definitely a burner, but he also has that height to go along with being able to play on that outside. So you don't have to worry about pegging him only into the slot. So then for years to come, you got Bateman on one side, Michael Pittman on the other side. You got Jonathan Taylor running up the gut of that probably best offensive line in the game right now. And that's only going to help Carson Wentz and that Indy offense try to get to the next level and beat the Bills and beat the Chiefs in that AFC divisional and AFC championship games. Going back now to Tennessee, obviously last year's first round off didn't work out with Isaiah Wilson as he was traded to the Dolphins and then cut about 2 days later. So they definitely still need some assurance there on that offensive line, but there really just isn't anybody here that I would love as a 2022 overall pick. I think Alex Leatherwood is a very good offensive tackle piece. I don't know if he's a starting right now caliber of player. So I think this is where they could go with the best cornerback available, Greg Newsome, to help out that defense a little bit. Now, this is where I think edge just makes perfect sense. Robert Saleh obviously is a defensive-minded guy. They picked up Carl Lawson in free agency to a hefty deal, and they still have Quinn Williams, who I think is one of the best interior defensive linemen in the game. He's an absolute menace to every offensive line and every quarterback, and I think shoring up that that defensive line is going to be the staple of that defense for that Robert solid defense makes the most sense. And I think getting a guy like Jalen Phillips works out perfectly. Now, 6'5", 258, concerning a tad because he had to kind of retire, I guess you could say, for a year, but then he came back for the 2020 season, but he missed the 2019 because he had some concussions. So a little alarming there, I guess you could say. And that's why picking him at 23 opposed to, say, 15 for another team that wants an edge guy makes it a little more safe. And also, it's their second first round pick. So it's a little less pressure, I guess, for him to pan out because he's one of two first rounders. So I still think Jalen Phillips is a great, great player. Just a little risky here for them to get, but it is what it is. Every pick for the most part is pretty risky. Now going over to Pittsburgh here. Again, it says their team needs a cornerback, offensive tackle, and interior offensive line. Now, kind of same deal as the Titans here. I think they need some offensive line help, but I don't see anybody here that really screams first rounder. I mean, like, do you reach for a little bit for a guy like Landon Dickerson, who I think is going to be a very good player? Is he a first round talent? I don't know. And also coming off an ACL injury is always tough. I know football is a weird sport because everybody seems to get hurt at some point, but there's always that kind of adage of, oh, if you get hurt in college, you're definitely going to get hurt in the NFL. But I don't really buy into that too much. Obviously, I don't really have the luxury of buying into that because the Dolphins drafted two, and I severely wanted him. But let's go with maybe a little bit of a wild card here. I think getting a guy like Trayvon Moehrig to be the center of that already great Steelers defense, and I think for the next 4 to 5 years, having him pair back out there with Minkah Fitzpatrick, I think would be an awesome, awesome kind of tandem back there. So let's lock in that right now. Now we going over to Jacksonville here. Again, obviously, clearly rebuilding. They had a pretty good offseason. I mean, they got Shaquille Griffin, cornerback from the Seahawks, for a pretty nice deal. Rayshawn Jenkins, a safety, and Marvin Jones Jr. on a 2-year deal, only for like $7 million, which is pretty nice. Now, Urban Meyer is gonna kind of need that do-it-all player to kind of make his life a little easier on the defense, and that's where I think you get a guy like Zaven Collins, who's a versatile linebacker out of Tulsa. I think it's just gonna make everybody's life a lot easier to have him be the signal caller there. He's a sideline to sideline type player, and I think he's going to be a very, very great player in the NFL for many years to come. Now, I know the Browns signed Jadeveon Clowney, and I know they obviously have Myles Garrett, but the thing with Jadeveon Clowney, he's a 1-year deal, so I don't know if him being on a 1-year deal is going to stop me from getting a guy from the edge position. Now, if a guy like Christian Barmore is still there as a defensive tackle, I think that would be enough to sway me from the edge position. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens here. I think it's going to be interesting for a lot of teams because you're seeing a lot of 1-year deals now. When your favorite team is up on the clock, are you really kind of banking on that 1-year deal player to be here for the long term? Because again, any of these rookies you get contractually are going to be there for 4 years, so you at least kind of have some assurance there as far as kind of constructing a roster, stuff like that. So as much as I want to go Barmore, and I know I kind of just referenced that I was gonna go it, I still think I want to go edge here with Azeez Ojulari, just because I don't know if Clowney is going to be there next year. You just have absolutely no idea. And even if he is, it can't hurt to have another edge rusher right behind there. You always need depth at those positions. Now, again, this is a tough spot for Baltimore here. They desperately need wide receiver, and they're obviously missing out on the premier kind of elite pass catchers early on in the draft from being at pick 27. Can't really fault them for that because they're just a good team. But I don't know how this wide receiver isn't the number one team need. And this is where I think, again, Elijah Moore, his abilities align more with what Hollywood Brown already does. So I'm gonna have to again, same with Kadarius Toney. They kind of do the same things. They're more of those slot burner guys. So you're gonna have to go with a guy like think like Terrace Marshall Jr., who's 6'3", 200 pounds, more of that outside receiver, 50-50 jump ball, kind of like what Mark Andrews does, but obviously Terrace Marshall Jr. being a lot faster and not a tight end. I think this is a good pick, maybe not a great pick for the Ravens, but what do I know? Now coming back to the Saints. Now this is where again they have Michael Thomas on the outside. They lost that deep threat burner in Manuel Sanders, and I think it's a perfect situation for them to fill that void in that offense. And I think getting a guy like Elijah Moore, who I think has been slept on in this whole draft process, I think is really going to show his abilities, and then really going to show us why we shouldn't have been sleeping on him the whole time here. So yeah, obviously see slot receiver here. I mean, he ran a pretty sure he ran a sub 4.4 40 in his pro day. So I think he's just an absolute burner out of Ole Miss here. I think he's a perfect fit for them and perfect fit for that offense. Now, I know the story has always been that Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers never get that first round kind of weapon for him. I think maybe 2021 finally is the year. And again, getting a guy like Kadarius Toney, who is an absolute explosive electric playmaker, getting him in that offense is awesome because we already know that Aaron Rodgers can throw the deep 50-50 ball better than just about anybody. Now you're going to make Aaron Rodgers' life even easier by saying, hey, throw this 5-yard, 7-yard slant to Kadarius Toney and let him take it 75, 80 yards up the field. Everybody's life in that offense is going to be even easier with Kadarius Toney on the field to pair alongside Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Devontae Adams, who I think is the best wide receiver in the game. That wide receiver room is going to be absolutely elite getting Kadarius Toney right now. Now, here is where the Bills, I know, for some reason, have been rumored to get or to maybe want a running back, one of the elite running backs, and we see obviously two of them are left here. I just don't know because I feel like that combo of Zach Moss and Devin Singletary is good enough, and I think that offensive line is good enough to create the needed holes for those running backs to kind of do what they need to do. So I don't know if I would ever kind of go running back here, but I think getting a guy like Caleb Farley makes sense because Tre'Davious White's there. He's awesome. And you have Josh Norman, who is more on the outside and also playing in the slot. But I think they're kind of missing that third cornerback there. I know they've probably one of the best safety tandems back there in Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. So I think getting a guy like Caleb Farley to come in and either be that outside or slot guy to really help out that already great defense just makes perfect sense here for Buffalo Bills. Now, this is where, again, we saw that the Chiefs got absolutely dismantled in the in the Super Bowl. I know that some of their offensive linemen were hurt, but those same guys that were hurt and didn't play in the Super Bowl ended up getting cut or not re-signed this past offseason. You know, they made a huge splash getting Joe Thuney and made him the highest paid offensive guard in the NFL. And I think this is a situation where they're not done yet adding to that offensive line. And I think this is a perfect spot for Alex Leatherwood to kind of fall in here. And I know I may have referenced before that he maybe isn't a first round talent, but when you get to this back end 31, 32, first, second round is kind of similar. They mesh together. I wouldn't pick him pick 21. I think there's a lot more value there and a lot better players. But here at 31 for a team that is basically already complete, and anyone you get is just going to be some insurance, maybe some depth, or I mean, some or competing for a starting spot. I think this is a perfect opportunity for Alex Leatherwood to maybe go back-to-back championships, and he had a natty championship last year, and then maybe come back and get another Super Bowl championship with the Chiefs here. Now, this is just a perfect situation for Tampa Bay. They've re-signed just about everybody. Chris Godwin, Gronk, Shaq Barrett, and Ndamukong Suh's back. Leonard Fournette's back. And Ndamukong Suh is an absolutely an absolute mercenary, excuse me, on that defensive line there. And you pair him next to JPP and Shaq Barrett, and you have Vita Vea there as well. But the thing with Sue is he's getting a little older, and obviously he costs a little more. So getting a guy like Christian Barmore to pair alongside and be a rotational piece early on this year, and then fill in Sue's role next year at probably like what 3-4 million a year. I'm pretty sure that 32nd pick is. It's just an absolute perfect decision for Tampa Bay to keep that already great defense and get them even better. So perfect situation for a great player to end up on a great team and compete for championships. So let's just recap this draft here again. Please comment below whether you like the pick, you don't like the pick. Again, you could find us at Capson at Capson on Twitter. We're on TikTok as well. My name is Matt Ferrara. You can find me at Matt Ferrara, MattFerrara11. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, whatever. So we got Jacksonville getting Trevor Lawrence, the Jets getting Zach Wilson, the Niners getting Justin Fields, Atlanta getting Kyle Pitts, Cincinnati getting Jamar Chase, Denver getting Trey Lance, the Lions getting Devontae Smith, the Panthers getting Penei Sewell, the Dolphins getting Jaylen Waddle, Cowboys getting Patrick Surtain, Giants getting Micah Parsons, the Eagles getting Rashawn Slater, Los Angeles Chargers getting Christian Darrisaw, the Vikings getting Elijah Vera Tucker, the Patriots getting Mac Jones, Cardinals getting J.C. Horn, Raiders getting Tevin Jenkins, Dolphins getting Najee Harris, Washington football team getting Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, Bears getting Kwity Paye. Then we got the Colts getting Rashad Bateman out of Minnesota, the Titans getting Greg Newsome II, the Jets getting Jalen Phillips, edge rusher out of Miami, Steelers getting Trayvon Moehrig, safety out of TCU, Jacksonville getting Zaven Collins, Browns getting Azeez Ojulari, Ravens getting Terrace Marshall Jr., Saints getting Elijah Moore, Packers finally getting Aaron Rodgers, that first round weapon in Kadarius Toney, Bills getting Caleb Farley, the Chiefs getting Alex Leatherwood, and wrapping up with the Super Bowl champions Tampa Bay Buccaneers getting Christian Barmore. Once again, thank you again for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe to our channel, subscribe to our and listen to all our podcasts, not just Ice the Kicker or Matt's Mocks. We got plenty covering all sports, and we hope you like it. Thanks again, guys.